I'm Andrew Davies and I'm the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. Well, we're a party that will have in our manifesto a moratorium on fracking in the next Assembly term. Obviously, you can't tie in the successor Assembly, i.e. the 6th Assembly, because political parties might change their energy policy for whatever reason. But certainly it is our plan to have a moratorium on fracking in Wales during the lifetime of the next Assembly. But you've got to have a balanced energy policy so that you can generate the energy that industry needs, domestic customers need, and ultimately you can have that balance that will deliver a 21st century economy. Well, we want to make sure that we have a balanced energy policy that ultimately will keep energy bills low, but make sure that they're the best energy providers for the environment, because we do want to hand on a better environment to the next generation. I'm a father of 4 children. I want to make sure that the environment I hand on to those children is better than my parents handed on to me, and surely that's got to be the goal for everyone. I wouldn't want to tie myself into a specific deadline of 2030, because I think we need to be practical in what we can deliver. We've only recently had the announcement around Tata Steel. A lot of the problems around that have been around energy prices, and so what we've got to do is make sure that when we do move to a more energy friendly, environmentally friendly power source, we do create the transition that ultimately allows businesses to be competitive on the global market and domestic household bills can be kept as low as possible, because it's a big concern for householders. As a farmer myself, it drives me mad to see such quality food just being thrown out. And I think we just need to be far more proactive on this particular agenda item. And I think education is the important thing, educating people that, you do have a responsibility to make use of the food, either you purchase or that you get given. As a farmer, I know how much work goes into producing that food and then actually processing it so it is consumable, whether it's off the supermarket shelf or the farmer's market stall or whatever it is bought. And so I do think that we need to improve levels of education to make sure that people know what their responsibilities are when they purchase the food and where they store it, so that they use the maximum amount of food and we don't get increasing levels of food waste, either going to landfill or just going into incineration. That's not good practice. Well, we're big supporters of community energy projects because we see it's a way of the community actually getting involved in something that we take for granted has always been at the flick of a switch. But what we've got to do is make sure that we can create a grid network that ultimately, if someone comes forward with a community energy project, they can get that grid connection, because the big blight on many communities taking forward their ambitions around energy generation is actually being able to plug into the grid, which is the source obviously of putting the energy for domestic use or industrial use. So we'd be looking with the grid providers to make sure that there is an uplifting capacity and a modernisation of the grid around Wales, because without that access to grid capacity, nearly all projects just fall by the wayside. Well, I think, again, it's one of those things that's incumbent on us as householders, whether we are tenants and we demand it of our landlords, or whether we are owners ourselves as such, or whether you're a house builder. It has to make sense to have energy efficient homes that actually stop the seepage out. And when you look at some of the satellite imaging that are done of urban areas in particular, and you see certain houses glowing because so much heat is escaping, and then other houses which have taken the measures, positively insulated and holding their heat in as beacons of good practice. Again, it goes back to education and informing people what you can do, and ultimately I believe working with our Westminster colleagues via the Treasury to put the incentives in place, either through the tax system or through allowances that can be created that will incentivise people to do that. But again, it's just simple education, alerting people to what they can do. Very often very simple measures like changing the light bulbs in their own homes, just insulating doors. You don't need the great big projects, although we'd love to see that. So it's starting with the most simplest packages and working up to the more comprehensive measures that can be taken, especially in new house building, but also then getting into the older stock, because very often it is the old stock, sadly, that lags behind in this drive. Well, it would be in the field of education, I think. We're certainly looking to be bringing forward an act in the field of education, and I believe that good environmental practice evolves around educating the next generation to make sure that they realise what they can do and what they can achieve, and the education system's a good vehicle to deliver that information, that they can really, really grow into being strong environmentalists with good credentials. Because we know that if you take food, for example, if the children are going around with mum and dad and they pick up some food that the children know a particular bit about, they might say, no, don't buy that because of E numbers, or they might say, no, that's not good for your health, and the food doesn't get bought. And I think if we can do the same with environmental issues, then I think we can have a real impact on the way we can improve Wales's green credentials. So I'd certainly look to engage with the environmental lobbies and ultimately the education fraternity to see whether that would be a good vehicle to introduce environmental improvements. Well, as I said, as father of 4 children, I want to make sure that I hand on a better environment, a cleaner environment to the next generation, so that they then, to their children, can do the same. And I think if we build that ethos in our thinking, then it does make sure that we are environmentally alert. And to me, that's what I seek to achieve. Being a farmer, I look at myself as a custodian of the countryside. I look to try and look after, nurture and care, because whilst I might own my land, I am but a mere guardian of that land, which has been round for many millions of years. It has changed shape and contours and all the rest of it over the time, but it is our job to make sure we hand a better environment on to the next generation, and that's where I see my role.